Mr. Rodney.
What's up, Keith?
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really well.
Yeah.
I didn't have any today, but I'm a big fan of lion's mane mushroom.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about mushrooms in the past.
You've talked about shrooms
me and shrooming.
before. Yeah.
Yes. Not
hallucinogenic
not the
shrooming.
hallucinogenic.
Yeah.
No. The culinary, the wild variety that is sometimes tasty, but has a lot of cool effects, good effects on nutrition from a nutritional standpoint. Nutritional shrooming. That's what I'm doing.
Oh, that's a good marketing term. You should.
I should
Trademark
coin that
that.
and start a
Yeah,
shroom company. Lion's mane, though. Lion's mane is one that... So I don't drink coffee. I don't do stimulants or uppers. However, it is on the list of nootropics. Nootropic shtick, because we've talked about those before.
We have.
Coffee's on that list, but this is more... Actually, caffeine's pretty natural. Those beans are real natural.
Yeah.
But
grow.
lion's mane has a really cool... Like when I'm feeling tired or if I need to focus... I'll pop a little bit of that into my tea, or even into a sparkling water with some apple cider vinegar and some kombucha, and then it's just like a brain food drink for me. Like I just firing. Like, what'd you have? I'm like, lion's mane.
Man, I just can't keep up. Welcome to, or welcome back to, More in Common. This is our social experiment. See, everyone has a story that can help us learn from one another. And we bring people into this safe space that we have learned to create so we can learn about their stories and get into difficult topics that challenge us in conversation and ultimately how we think.
And we have a lot of these conversations, and we're seeing a lot of similar threads through all of them. So what we're doing is breaking down these conversations to create a set of tools and a map that'll help you become a conversation boss so that you can be a catalyst for conversation in your day-to-day life.
Check out our website, www.moreincommonpod.com. That's the place to go to find all things More in Common. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can see our episodes, everything. Also, if you're feeling like sharing, and sharing is caring, send it out to some friends, some family. We appreciate you. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about our last episode with Felix. How'd you feel about that, Keith?
You know, it was fun. It was different, and I gotta say, the way she looks at the world, she obviously coming into it with the whole idea of cultural accessibility for health and wellness, and making that impact in underserved communities, for me, is just something I've never talked about or even thought about, quite frankly. You know, I kind of take for granted that I can go to Whole Foods and feed my family healthy, organic foods, right? And then even more so, and I think this one is just, it's so refreshing in a way, just how she openly shares about her motherhood shame, and how so many personal ambitions she had before becoming a mom, and ultimately now she's a stay-at-home mom, how she navigates that, how she manages that, how she openly understands it. And I think it's such a great opportunity to help others. I'm sure it's not an isolated incident with Felix. How about you?
Man, I like that first one. I have thought about it, but her saying that she's a unicorn in that space, you know, that kind of highlights the need for representation and the importance of representation even.
Yeah, for sure.
And then her talking about the conversation with her son, her white presenting son, which, you know, it's a heartbreaking conversation. It's a heartbreaking story to hear that you even have to have that conversation. But her coaching, her guidance to him about how to, or that it is his responsibility to take care of his black presenting friends, because the way that they're perceived in situations and the things he can get away with and do is different than what they can. And the awareness to do that, and the feeling, the responsibility she has to do it. And then the message she said, you know, to white parents in general, the guidance for their children and how to coach them.
It's definitely a unique and different message I had never heard of.
I never heard it.
Yeah.
I never really heard a message that was that concise and very clear on like, hey, here's something tangible you can do to help your kids help their Black friends.
Totally.
So, yeah, I thought it was a really good episode. I really enjoyed the conversation. And who do we have this week?
Well, we have Tina McGuff, straight from Scotland. She is a best-selling author. Her book is called Seconds to Snap, which I have had the chance to read since our interview, and it is outstanding and very detailed. It's ultimately about her journey as a teenager through young adulthood, living with and managing anorexia to full recovery and a very healthy and happy life. Her years of lived experience, as well as working alongside psychologists, eating disorder and mental health charities, and supporting families through the hell of these very complex illnesses, has given her a huge amount of insight and practical information to bring to people and help others navigate these complexities. She is a regular guest on national TV, radio, newspaper, and all to start those important conversations with people across the world in schools, universities, private hospitals, and workplaces. And of course, we do have to give a special thank you to the Dover family. Bracia Dover, you had a chance to meet her last year, and you will have a chance to meet her father later this year. But they put us together. They got us in touch, and we're super grateful to have met Tina, and she wants to send a special thank you to Brenda Chapman and Kevin Lima for believing in her and to bring her story to life on the big screen. So what did we talk about?
We got into that stigma around mental illness, talked about her growing up in Scotland and South Africa, so she lived around apartheid a little bit. We touched on that. We talk into her story, and I'll just leave it at that. We go into her story, and there's so much there. I would say that, one of my big observations from the conversation was her clarification around mental health and mental illness.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, I've never heard somebody just point out the difference.
Yeah. No, it was good.
Yeah.
And it's concise and clear.
Yeah.
Right.
What about you? You got any tips you want to pull out of it?
For two, one from her and one from us, right? She does a really, really, really good job not assuming anything about our understanding about her perspective and where she is. She actually asks a lot of clarifying conversations when she refers to a stone as a form of measurement, and she clarifies that. And a pen pal's ecosystem that's available to her in Scotland, and she asks us, and I just think that's such a critical component of conversation is don't assume someone else knows what you're talking about, and sometimes it's important to make sure that they do understand. And then from our perspective, I mean, she came back to us with some of the most gracious feedback, and the idea that she just felt safe and comfortable talking to us about her story. And it's such a critical component, the idea of creating a safe space to have these points of discussion and really giving people that feeling of welcomeness into the dialogue without judgment, right? So it's sprinkled throughout, obviously, those two, but have a listen for them and really, really enjoy this episode.
So I went to the library and I started researching eating problems, eating things, and this book came up saying anorexia, and I started reading it, and I immediately identified that I had every single thing that this girl had in this book. But the funny thing was, she had lost like 3 stone or something in this book, and all I thought was, is that all? Oh my God, I can do this stand on my head. This is going to be so easy for me. This is the easiest and best thing I've ever done. I thought it was my new best friend. It gave me this warmth and protection and control almost. What about the calories you really can't control, like in the air, for example? So say there's millions of calories in the air, and I started to pant to try and think that by panting it would burn off more energy, and the oxygen laden with calories would burn off. I mean, it was ridiculous. And at that moment I really thought, this is ridiculous. I knew, but I didn't care. I just cared so little about myself that I couldn't have given a shit, but I knew I was deeply unwell. So that was anyway. So I turned 60 in the August, and by the December, I was 6 stone.
Hi, Tina. How are you?
Morning, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Good.
Thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So right out of the gate, before we get into, your background, one of the things that's really important to you is breaking down the stigma of mental health. And we'll get into that, but I'm curious from your perspective, given that you're involved in it all the time, what do you think still contributes to the stigma of mental health?
Great question, actually, because there's so many things that contributes to this. And I think it's lack of education. I wouldn't say, and sometimes ignorance in some people's minds. They assume, for example, with anorexia, which is mental illness, that it's not a mental illness. That's one of the stigmas around that. Immediately, they think it's just someone who doesn't want to eat, or they're just super skinny, or, they look like a skeleton. Immediately, that's misinformation, because anorexia is under the umbrella of an eating disorder, and it's a very, very complex mental illness it's the highest mortality rate, in fact, of all. In fact, and even here in the UK, it kills more people per year, physically, medically, and via suicide because of the condition than diabetes, for example. So, but a lot of people don't know that. Obviously, right off the bat there, Rod, you didn't know that. So it's one of these things, and people just think, no one really knows about that. It's often not really talked about because people are often scared as well to ask the questions, and they're scared almost how do they deal with the answer, and also a lot of times, I know from my experience with other people, they're scared to say to someone who they know is struggling, how are you, in case they cry, for example. And then they don't know how to deal with that situation. So it's just, if you give people the power to deal with that situation in an effective way, they'll feel so much more confident to have those conversations and not worry. Because at the end of the day, right, we're all human, we all have feelings, and sometimes just talking is so much more helpful than anything else.
Wow.
And what do you say to someone? Because, I hear this often. Say to someone, just pick yourself up. Go get after the day.
Give yourself a shake.
Yeah, make it happen. What's your problem? Because it's an honest response that a lot of people have because they don't understand it. So I'm curious, how do you respond to that? How do you help someone see that it's...
So there's a difference between, this is the thing, what causes some confusion. Everybody has mental health, okay? Like your oral health, your foot health, whatever health, it's all one. It's all part of you. However, there's a massive difference between mental ill health and the complexities that become. So if you're, say, for example, if you have a little bit of, you're not feeling 100%, you're a little bit down, you're a little bit under the weather, and you're not clinically depressed, yeah, of course, if my husband said to me that day, come on, Tina, you can go outside, let's go, give yourself a shake, blah, 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 I could understand that, because he's right. I could probably go outside, have a brisk walk, feel 100 times better.
Mm-hmm.
That's without medication and that kind of thing. However, if you said that to someone who's lying in their bed for 2 months, trying to set themselves on fire because they're so depressed and stuck in this rut and hate themselves and can't eat or drink or sleep, if you said that to someone, literally it's the most awful thing you could say. And it comes from a place of, they're just trying to be helpful, I think, but they really don't understand the complexity. So I think breaking down the barriers of understanding the complexity of that massive between mental health and mental illness is important. So people know, what's the point? I would never say that to someone because it's just ridiculous, So I think that would be the answer to that.
Yeah. I think, and we'll probably go into that a little bit more. I think I have some questions, but you're, I kind of want to get into background a little bit and also point out that you're in Dundee, Scotland, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
we're long way away.
Long way away. We're on a little bit
From
of it.
us, anyway.
Yeah.
Close to you.
I guess it's pretty local for you. But so tell us a little bit about your background. Like you have a very important story. I want to say fascinating, but that's not. I don't think that encapsulates it. It's an important story. And first of all, thank you for sharing it. And
you're welcome.
And before we get into the meat of it, like tell us a little bit about growing up in Scotland.
So I was here in Dundee until I was on my 6th birthday, actually. And then my mum's brother lived in Africa, in South Africa, Pretoria. And he was doing great over there. So he had said to Mum, you should bring your kids over here. It's a great life. It's very warm and it's hot and it's lovely. And the employment was fantastic. Whereas here in Scotland at that time, it wasn't great. There was a lot of unemployment and they were having some issues. Mum and Dad weren't having the greatest of times. They thought this amazing outdoor lifestyle where it's sunny all the time would be amazing for us. So that's where we went. And it was amazing. I mean, my goodness, I had the best time ever. I thought I was having the best time because I wasn't aware of any issues in the background. Mum and Dad kind of kept us very ignorant to their problems. But it was a beautiful country. I don't know if any of you guys have been to Africa, but it's, oh my goodness, it's stunning. Oh, it's stunning. So we were in Pretoria and we travelled often to Durban and Kruger National Park and things like that. It was amazing. We ran about bare feet. I spoke fluent Afrikaans, which I can't anymore, unfortunately. And we had just an amazing life. My youngest sibling was born there. And then my dad and mum were homesick and also didn't like a lot of what was going on with the troubles over there. So they decided that they would come back to Scotland when in my early teens. And that's what kind of happened. So my early
real
childhood
quick,
was...
when you say troubles over there, what are you referring to?
The apartheid.
Okay.
They hated, oh my goodness. We weren't used to that and it was just not good at all.
Did you, not to divert your direction, but did you witness it at such a young age, or is that one of them you did witness it?
Yeah, and it's something we didn't like, and my parents couldn't get used to. They didn't appreciate it at all. For example, you had to, like, when we arrived, everybody had people working with. Now they weren't even well off at all. My mum and dad, like, my dad worked for a company called Iscor, which was just like a painter and decorator. And Mum worked in a superstore on a Max Factor counter. But you always had someone who cleaned the house and things like that. And this lady was called Elizabeth, and she was lovely, and we got on fantastic with her because she looked after us all the time. So one day, I can't remember this. Mum had obviously told me this lately, and she was telling me that she got a knock at the door one evening from the police, and she brought them in, and they said to her, "We've had a report that you've had Elizabeth sitting at your table. So if you ever have Elizabeth sitting at your table again, we will, you'll be fined, and this will happen, and this will happen." And my mum was like,
"Yep.
How dare you threaten me? This is ridiculous. This is a human being, my God. And they were not you. I mean, there's Scottish people from here. That's just not in our life. But yeah, it's horrible. Like, people shouldn't live like that. And that's not the way we wanted to live. So that was one of the big reasons why we left. To come back to Scotland, because there's none of that. We didn't see any of that, and it was not something we were comfortable with. Well, my parents didn't want us to be raised like that anyway. Sure. So yeah, that's the reason why we came back to Dundee.
Makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
You were in your early teens at that point?
Yes. So everything then was fine. We had we thought my mum and dad had a great relationship. We didn't hear any arguing. Everything was, we were very naive, I would say, as kids. I think, I mean, often people ask me this question, do you think it's because we were so ignorant, the reactions we had to the circumstances happened? And I don't know the answer, however, but I think it might have prepared us a little better, because what happened was, so we were kind of just plodding along. None of us had any problems, right? We didn't have any self-esteem issues. I didn't think of my body in any negative way. We didn't have money to put in my Vogue magazines or things like that. So none of these things were in our heads. I didn't know what mental illness was. Very ignorant to these things. Remember, we didn't have the internet either or things like that in the 80s, the late 80s. So what happened was, we were going along great. Mum and Dad got this nice little house. We were all at school. Everything seemed to be going fine. And then there was this one evening, I got woken up by my neighbour. And the fact that during the night my neighbour, who's a male, was tapping me on the shoulder as a 13-year-old girl was bizarre. And he said to me, Tina, there's been an accident, you need to come with us. And of course, I was really scared, and I got my little sister, she was sleeping with me. I started to go down the stairs, and the house was full of police officers. And it was really a terrifying moment, because we didn't know what was going on, and I felt all this anxiety that I never felt. And this is the moment our life kind of fell apart. In fact, the book was nearly called The Tap on the Shoulder, because that's the moment my life changed. Mm-hmm. Our lives changed. And we didn't find out for a few days. We got taken away to this neighbour's house. And it turned out that my dad, unbeknown to us or anything, he had been not a very good dad, or a very good husband, actually. And he had been having affairs and not paying the bills. And he had one of my sisters hiding all the mail that was coming in. So my mum never knew anything. So suddenly, when she found out behind the scenes about all these things that was going on, like she was about to have the house repossessed, our business was repossessed, he was, going out with other women that she had no idea about, she just flipped. She flipped out, and so she attacked him with a knife. So she was taken to jail, and he was taken to hospital. So it was a horrible time. So our lives just became like, from one perfect moment, it felt like, to this very extreme time where we ended up with, no home. We had no money for food. Literally, I don't know about in the States, but here you have, you need to put money to get electric on a stick or a card, and you put it in. It's like a prepaid thing. We often wouldn't even have money for that, so we'd sit in the dark. My dad was absent completely from our lives. He would tell us he'd meet us, and he'd never turn up. And it was devastating. We didn't know what to do. So my mum ended up a very different person. I mean, she used to be such a beautiful, strong, lovely lady, and she was even offered a contract modelling L'Oreal. She was a beautiful woman, and she became this shadow of herself, where she couldn't communicate. She'd sleep all the time. She couldn't speak to us. We became like almost feral kids. We just ended up going out doing crazy things. I couldn't cope mentally. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand what my thoughts were. But I knew I was terrified, and I felt a huge responsibility for my siblings, and I felt I wasn't protecting them enough. So what happened was we didn't have money for food and things, so I would rake the bins. And I don't know about there, but you can get money back on bottles. You trade them in. Yeah. So I would kind of get money like that, and I would go to the chip shop. Excuse me. I would go to the chip shop with big bags of bottles to try and get some food for the girls, and it was just horrible.
Are you the oldest?
I'm the oldest of four.
Four? Oh wow!
Mm-hmm.
All girls?
Yeah, all girls. And then you feel so inferior as a person, because your clothes are unkempt, your hair's like, we didn't even have shampoo. We used to just use, if we had a little bar of soap, we'd try and, I've all got long hair, so you can imagine the state our hair were in. We We couldn't wash properly. We had no hot water. So it was a dire situation. It went from like this very idyllic, what we thought was this lovely, happy home, to this, what the hell's happened? We can't even eat. We're sitting in the dark. We can't wash. And so it was a horrible, horrible time. And none of us knew what to do. And this is where the problems began to happen, because like most kids, if you don't have a coping mechanism, you just turn to something else to escape. So I started drinking, smoking cannabis, just doing anything I could, solvent abuse. I would hang about parks on my own at night, almost hoping for myself to die so that I didn't have to deal with things. It was like I'm almost vicariously hoping to relinquish the responsibility, because I didn't know how to cope with protecting my sisters. And in fact, I phoned an orphanage here when I was a teenager, and I begged them to take us in, because I thought, if they take us in an orphanage now, we'll be together. Whereas if the social services here, how bad our lives are, they'll separate us all, and it'll be my fault for telling. So these were the kind of things I was thinking, and I hated everything. So what I did was, I had really long hair like this, and I just shaved it all off one day, and I started getting loads of piercings, and I got tons and tons of makeup, and I got people to tattoo on my arms and here and on my chest. And I mean, I really went from one very naive little girl to this mess of a person, I can't explain, apart from I just hoped it would all end and I would probably die and no one would give a shit, and this is how it went. So all the time this was happening, unbeknown to myself, clearly there wasn't something right in my head, okay? I wasn't coping. And no one really asked me at school anything. We never talked about it. I was scared that anybody would notice. I was pretending it was fine, because I didn't want, as I said, I didn't want the social services ever hearing anything, because I would be the one to blame and Mum would get into trouble. So one day a school teacher asked me if I was okay, and I lied, whereas I really wanted that school teacher to protect me and for me to get a hug from him and for me to be able to tell him the truth and him to look after us, but I couldn't. So I call it, that sliding door moment. I lied and said, yeah, of course, I'm fine. And I walked out the door, and it just went from bad to worse. So that's how it kind of all kicked off, really. Yeah. That's where it all started to go wrong.
So your dad, if you don't mind me asking, your dad survived the attack, it sounds like.
He survived the attack, yeah, but we didn't.
Oh, but you never saw him?
Very rarely.
Did your mom go to jail?
She went to jail on remand, and then she was found not, she was admonished of the charges.
Okay. So you stayed with her. And
yeah.
How long did this go on? I mean, it happened at 13.
Yeah, well, it all went on until I became so unwell. So basically for the next 3 years, our life was torment. It was this very dysfunctional time. We didn't have a stable environment. It was toxic on every level. I stopped going to school, and the only thing I used to love was swimming, which was something I did in Africa a lot, was swimming and gymnastics, and dancing. So they became my only kind of solace. And for some bizarre reason, I started to feel this compellingness to exercise a lot. But the original man who woke me up with a tap on the shoulder, he was part of a family of Italians that lived by us at the time. And they asked if I wanted to go to Italy with them when I was 15. So I was like, yeah, of course, this would be amazing. But I didn't have any money. But they drove and they took me. And I think they felt sorry for me. They gave me some hours in their chip shop that they owned. And I think they was just, trying to help as much as they could. So we drove to Italy, and I was okay. I thought a normal girl, although I had all these issues going on. And there was one day on this beach, I'll never forget it. I've got a photo actually from the beach, and I've got a red swimsuit on, and I'm like 9 stone. I don't know I don't know what 9 stone is in pounds.
Oh, I know this from Dungeons and Dragons, and
so it's 14 pounds in a stone.
Yeah.
So I'm whatever the equivalent of 9 times 14 is. So I'm a normal, average, 15-year-old girl, very healthy, didn't have any body concerns. And I turned around this day and I thought I saw this woman kind of indicating my arse was big, right? Now, I don't know, I still think I made this up in my head, because part of anorexia is psychotic. It's a psychotic illness, for me anyway it was. And I think my brain, just something snapped. And I literally felt like a physical feeling in my brain. And I felt this urge to run back to the apartment and stick my fingers down my throat for the frosties I just had, like that morning. Now, I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know where it came from. I'd never heard of anorexia. I didn't know. I just had to do it. So this compulsion kicked in. And every time I ate on that holiday, I had to be sick. And I kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And I was thinking about calories. I didn't even know what calories were, my goodness. So when I got back from that holiday, I was extremely, I was there for a month, but this new way of thinking was my whole world. I ran to the library and I got nutrition books and I started writing out every single thing I ate, working out the calories, the fats, the trans. You can imagine, you only had books back then, so trying to work out all the nutrition of what you ate was difficult. And I was a vegetarian, so I was really strict anyway. So it became like this regimented Bible, and then I would run down to the city centre every day and start weighing myself on these scales, what I call the holy grail of scales. And it gave you like a printout of your body fat percentage, so on. And I would keep these slips like every day, like golden tickets, but it was miles. Like I ran miles every day to get this thing, and it kept me going and motivated until I realised in my head, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you thinking like this? So I went to the library and I started researching eating problems, eating things, and this book came up saying anorexia, and I started reading it and I immediately identified that I had every single thing that this girl had in this book. But the funny thing was, she had lost like 3 stone or something in this book, and all I thought was, is that all? Oh my God, I can do this stand on my head. This is going to be so easy for me. This is the easiest and best thing I've ever done. I thought it was my new best friend. It gave me this warmth and protection and control almost from all my problems. So it did. It literally became where I stayed. I didn't go to school. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't drink anymore because I had calories in it. But one thing I did realise was when I was getting up at 5, I was doing so much exercise and the weight was falling off me all the time. And the more the weight fell, the more I wore so that no one could see I was losing weight. So I was piling on the clothes, and I was grateful because my period stopped, and I was so happy. And then my boobs started to disappear, and I was even happier. And I started to feel this amazing control and power over myself, which I'd never felt before. And then this is when I really knew I was sick, like really sick, because I had a pen friend in Ireland. And you guys know what a pen friend is. I don't know if you know.
I don't, actually.
No. Okay, so we used to have a big magazine here called the Smash Hits, which was like I'm just trying to think what it would be like. Anyways, it was a music magazine.
Oh, like Rolling Stone or
Yeah. So I loved U2 and Madonna. They were my go-to sounds, and I used to dance to them or listen to them, and they kept me sane in this little Walkman I had. So anyway, at the back of the magazine, you could write to someone who had the same interests as you. And I connected with this girl in Dublin called Sandra, and she went to the same school as the U2 boys, although she was younger, she was my age. And this was our connection. And then I obviously, how when you're young and you love a band or whatever, I used to love the drummer who was Larry Mullen, okay? And I used to think, oh my God, one day I'm going to marry Larry Mullen, as if that would ever happen. But anyway, she was sending me twigs from his garden, allegedly. And I would get these letters with these twigs and everything in it. And I thought this was the best thing ever. So anyway, and it was interesting because she was really the only person I spoke to. But I didn't speak about anything. It was just this lovely conversation. And I knew she would probably never meet me in real life, and I'd never meet her. So I was able to just communicate with this girl. So one day I went up to get a stamp. And when I say went up, I literally ran, hop, skip, jump, everything to get to this post office. And I went to lick the stamp, and I immediately thought, oh my goodness, what is the substance on the back of this thing? What?
How many calories?
I can't calorie count this. I don't know what it is. Obviously it's glue, but I never. And then I started to have a real panic about, oh my God, I'd licked the envelope. That must say that's 1 million calories. That's why I'm still fat. And this was all the kind of strange thoughts that was going through my head. And then I started to really panic when I came out the post office, because I thought, what about the calories you really can't control, like in the air, for example? So say there's millions of calories in the air, and I started to pant to try and think that by panting it would burn off more energy, and the oxygen laden with calories would burn off. I mean, it was ridiculous. And at that moment I really thought, this is ridiculous. I knew, but I didn't care. I just cared so little about myself that I couldn't have given a shit, but I knew I was deeply unwell. So that was anyway. So I turned 60 in the August, and by the December, I was 6 stone. So I'd lost the 3 stone in that short period of time. So that's what, 32 pounds in that short period of time. Yeah, that's right. So I was really not very well, I wasn't keeping well. And then I ended up in hospital and ended up being really, really sick. I ended up getting really, really sick, where I lost even more weight, and I became sectioned under the Mental Health Act into an adult psychiatric unit. And yeah, it was a pretty horrendous experience after that.
Question on, so you mentioned, so you looked up eating disorders, like before the thing with air and calories and stamps, like do you remember what caused you to think something was up?
Yeah, because I thought, why am I behaving like this around my eating? Why? It wasn't like me. I didn't know why I was doing it, why I had this compulsion to make myself sick or abuse laxatives. I had no idea why or where this had come from. And after ignoring it for so long, I thought, I kind of have to know what's going on, because I need to understand it a bit better.
But once you learned about it, like you said, it's interesting if you could explain this. It became your friend, rather than you wanting to fix it. You embraced it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it became my only solace in life. Became this condition, this illness, this monster, as I call it. And it's like I can only, I mean, for example, recently an auntie of someone who's been really sick recently said to me, and this is the best description I've had of it, and it's true. She said her niece had been possessed and she needed to be exorcised, back. That's what it's like. It's like you're taken over and you're pushed out, and this new booming voice is in your head. But the reason you're not scared of it is because you think you're in control of it, and you're the one deciding, when actually it's not even a choice. I didn't choose that. It happened to me. Yeah, you can't choose to be anorexic this afternoon, for example. It's just not going to happen. It's a very complicated psychological reason. They still don't actually understand the complexities or whys and the wherefores.
Did and way out on a limb here, but you mentioned prior to this, you had this long self-destructive pattern where you were hoping to die.
Yeah.
Did that have anything to do with your embrace of it in a way that you could control the potential trajectory of still hoping to die, or did you live for it at that point? How did that play into it?
Well, initially it totally distracted me from the self-esteem issues I was having, like this, because it switched my brain to this power. It's like a power you gain over starvation, and it's like nothing I've ever felt before or after. I can't even, if you can bottle that, it would be incredible. That focus and determination to do something Anything. But I eventually used it for good. But in that moment, I was using it for destruction. But to me at the time, it was this me controlling every single thing about my own self, and it was my space, and no one could touch it.
What did it do? Well, so how did it affect your relationship with your sisters? Because I know that was a huge driving factor early, like into how you behaved. How did it affect that?
It cost me all those relationships. It took them all away. But the interesting thing was, it numbed me emotionally. And that's the sad part. I became an emotionless person. It stole everything I didn't have love for myself or anybody anymore. It was like I was a dead soul. And that's the sad part about often these conditions, for example, anorexia. It's like you lose touch and cognitively you lose perspective of relationships and the reality, and it's a really complicated brain function problem, unfortunately. So yeah, although I cared, it was like I felt like my pursuit of this relentless pursuit almost of starvation way trumped anything else you could imagine.
You said that anorexia was psychotic for you, or you said it was psychotic, and then you corrected that and said psychotic for you. So is that a thing? So how does that work? How does is it psychosis? Is that the right way to say it? How does that work with anorexia?
So, for example, I imagine my brain was making up situations like that one. So there was another time when I was in hospital, I imagined that, well, for me it was real, but it wasn't, the nurses didn't see it, but like I thought I saw something coming down from the ceiling to hurt me and things like that. Now, they were telling me it wasn't there, but I could see it with my own eyes.
So you could see it with your own eyes and hear them saying it's not real. So you're like,
But I'm like, no. And then they would say to me, it's all part of an illness. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's I can see it. My goodness, and it's, so this is what now the reason I say for me is because every journey, it's like the flu, right? When you have the flu, Rodney and Keith, you both have the flu, but you both feel differently. You may have a stuffy nose and he may not. So it's everybody's journey is different, although often there's a linear path in the middle. The same things are happening. The whole experience could be very different, and some may experience things that others don't. So it's very unique.
Is psychosis a common side effect or a product of anorexia? Is it uncommon? I mean, I had never. This is great education. I had never known that was, even studying psychology. I didn't even know that was
okay. Yeah. Well, interesting actually, because when I didn't know anything about it when I was experiencing it. But what happened was I eventually became well, or I was weight restored, and they deemed me as kind of, I don't need to be in a psychiatric unit anymore, albeit almost 4 years in and out. So by the time I was 20, I was ready for the big bad world. And they put me into a rehab unit because I couldn't go anywhere. I had no home to go to and things like that. So I thought, I started then going to the library again where I knew, and I started to understand. I wanted to understand why had my brain just chosen for me to almost kill me, right? So, because also part of the starvation was suicidal. I mean, I, desperately tried to end my life, right? Every day. I literally didn't want to live every day. And I tried twice to do terrifying things to myself and was stopped. So I wanted to know why. Like, why? Why was I so bad at my brain? So what I did was I went back to where I knew I could get the information. It was a library, and I would read all the books, all the psychology books, and bibliotherapy is an amazing thing if you ask me. And I came across lots and lots of things, but one of the most incredible things that twigged something in my head was Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, we've all seen it, but it all made sense. As soon as I saw that and understood the way he was thinking and what he was trying to say all clicked in my head. It made sense. Of course I wasn't advancing as a human being on any level because none of my basic needs were being met, blah, blah, blah. So this is what happened. This really, really helped me. And then what happened was I eventually didn't need therapy. I turned all my negative energy into huge positive energy. I started doing things I never thought I would achieve. For example, my dad by this point was back in our life. He was actually doing really well successfully. He had this business, a pub and a club. We were getting big bands like Biffy Clyro and Snow Patrol coming into play. I wanted to be a fast jet pilot. I went into the RAF careers office and walked in this day and said, "Excuse me, I want to be a Harrier jump jet pilot." And they pretty much laughed me at the door, right? I had no education and I was a woman, so they were like, ha ha ha, see ya. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to be a commercial pilot. So my dad got me a loan through the business. I got my private pilot's license here at Tayside Aviation. But what was interesting there was it was all men. It was all guys that was flying. I hadn't had any close bonds, relationships by this point. I'd been, kind of away for a long time. So it was this whole new passion. I wasn't smoking, I wasn't drinking, I was being very healthy, I wasn't on medication, I wasn't in therapy. But I didn't want to tell anybody. I was too embarrassed by what I had been through and what people assumed about mental illness. But I became very competitive. This competition I had with myself then switched to other things. So I tried to beat them at the landings. I tried to do the best of this, the best of that. I wanted to get... So it was a real competition, but in a good way. I became great friends. And then I applied to be a commercial pilot. And in fact, I was enrolled at Kansas State University in Salina. So that was that. I was all set to do my commercial pilot license. I joined the Territorial Army because I couldn't join the Army because of my medical. I joined the Territorial. I won the top awards for that. So everything became this amazing, oh my God, I can do these things. So every day I did something. It built up my self-esteem and my confidence and all about, wow, why did I think I could do these things? So this is the way it went. And then I fell in love and I met my now husband one Christmas Day. This man walked in the pub, our pub I was working, and it was an instant love at first sight for both of us actually. And so I'm really lucky. So everything seemed to be going amazing, right? And he played ice hockey actually, and we started dating and going out, and he would take me to his ice hockey games. And I started to feel, now I thought my life was pretty okay at this point, right? I was okay, I was happy, healthy. I was back to my original weight. Everything seemed fine.
How old were you when you met your husband? So I was in my
early 20s, so like 22, okay. 23. This was all going on at this time.
Okay.
And then I started to get this really strange sensation, like in my stomach, like this anxiety feeling. I started to get intrusive thoughts. These thoughts started popping in my head. And I started to feel a real, like a light started to bother me. Light. I would go into a dark room and say, wow, this is really bright. I'd go to the ice rink and the lights in the ice arena, I would be sitting like, oh my God, I need my sunglasses. What's going on? And I just started to feel strange. So this went on for a few weeks. And my sister lived at the top of this building, top floor flat of this building in Dundee here. And I went up to see her one day. And I was sitting and I felt as if there was an invisible bungee cord wrapped around my waist and it was pulling me to ping me out of her top floor window. It was this horrible, horrible sensation that I had no control over. I didn't want to go out the window. I was really happy, but I had no choice. It was literally like it was about to happen to me against my own will. So I was so terrified, I kind of started grabbing onto the chairs and everything and ran down the stairs, jumped in my car and drove myself to the local kind of psychiatric hospital that's here. And I ran in and I thought, I'm about to go insane or something. I don't know what's happening in my brain. I ran in, I said, please help me. This is my name, my date of birth. This is my dad's name. This is his number. Because I thought, I don't know what I thought. I thought my head was awake. I didn't know what was happening. And I was so scared. and all these horrible thoughts and words and feelings. And so anyway, they quickly sat me down. They talked to me. They figured it. They knew from notes and things who I was. They gave me some medication. I was pretty much asleep for 2 days. And I came to, and I was in this psychiatric hospital. And it was really good when I woke up because I knew I was alive. I didn't know if I was going to be ever alive again. Like, I didn't know. And anyway, it turned out that had been a proper psychotic episode. I didn't know what psychosis was until that moment. They told me. And they told me it was all linked to the trauma back in the back that was still unresolved, that even though I'd had therapy for many years, they said it was part of that. And they also told me that, I didn't know this either, that there was a massive link between like that happening, anorexia, and then a psychotic episode, or overlapping, because the complexities of these illnesses is a lot of them do overlap. You know, it's depression, OCD, they're all in there. Like, you can't say this, that, and the next. So that's why when you ask, I know it's very long and convoluted, but that was psychosis on its own. But my thoughts, my rational thoughts, whilst I had control, were also psychotic because they were abnormal thoughts for me.
So it's not necessarily that anorexia is or causes or is paired with psychosis for anybody.
No,
you've had both. You had psychosis.
That's what
and
I said.
anorexia,
That's
so
what I said. It's a bespoke. Everybody's experience is very different, and that's the problem. It's
and the potential overlap of And I mean, even we don't even understand the funcking brain completely.
No.
Like
we don't. So it's, you're really, you've obviously told your story a lot, and you're really comfortable telling your story, but you said a couple of things within there. One, you kind of going back to that idea of like almost falling in love with it, right? You embraced it. It became your best friend, and it took 4 years in and out of a hospital. Like, and you were embarrassed by it. You didn't want to talk about it. You did, and that contributes to the perpetuating of the stigma and people not becoming well, because one, how does someone get through to someone? Like, how do you start to say something's happening, but I can't tell you? Like you said, I can't come to you and say, no, you're sick. That's why you're not eating, because that's not the way you're processing it. In the same way the nurses tell you that it's part of your illness, there's nothing coming from the ceiling, but that's your reality and it's true. So how do you do that? Like, how do people get,
I want to add something in there, because as you said that, the other thing I wrote down was you said this monster, as I call it. And as Keith is saying that, like, you embraced it. I had a picture of a little girl or a teenager hugging a monster. Like, you kind of made it your friend. And it's like, if somebody's calling your friend bad, like you're not going to hear them necessarily. Like,
no. And this is the thing. Like, there's a lot of work around, because a lot of people describe anorexia as it's your subconscious. It's your brain, as you said, it's a very complex thing, your brain, right? So it goes up, not just from thoughts, it goes into your behavior, into your subconscious mind, and it's a habitual behavior that's deeply ingrained, and a lot of it is in there. And you know yourself, especially if you've done psychology, it's an addiction. It's one of those things you cannot just snap out of. You cannot just make it go away one afternoon, like you can't just drop into it. And also takes a lot of unraveling and therapy to get out of it again. But so there's this like almost two people. To make it in a simple way, it's like two people's in your head. One's good and one's bad. But at the time, you think, because it's this almost all powerful being and it's giving you all these things you've never had before, which is this control or this power to ignore all that food and not be weak, and to never give in. And this is not the person that you've ever been before, potentially, or a situation you've been in before. So it's like you latch onto it for protection and use it as a control for protecting your emotions, but actually it is a bloody horrible evil monster that's killing you. I mean, it is literally killing you. It's not your friend in reality, but at the time you don't see it as a monster, especially when it's, you know, got you in its grips and it's got you sucked right into the core, because that's all you are, is that. So they're doing this therapy now where they're trying to say, should you separate that person and see anorexia on his own, give it a name, you know, have it, or is she saying this today, or is he saying this today? But a lot of psychologists say, no, you can't, because then you're giving it an excuse to behave on its own. So it's an interesting point you make there, because they're still doing work on that very thing. Do you identify it as a different body, or do you keep it all as one and not enable it? Actually take responsibility and own it, or, you know, so this is because it's so complicated, you know yourself, it's not, you know, this is going to fix everything. I mean, you know, I got the Lancet. Do you know what the Lancet is? It's like a medical journal. It's one of the biggest medical journals here. They did
the Lancer.
The Lancet, yeah. So they did a review of my book, for example, and even them, they've said, you know, they still don't know why, the reasons why these things happen and how to get, I mean, there is evidence-based research, but not everybody also responds or reacts to the same thing either. Right. Unfortunately.
Right.
You know?
So how do you, like, if someone, you know, in your life cares about you and you are refusing, I mean, I shouldn't even say refusing, like your reality is different from the reality that they're perceiving, but you're on the verge of death and they are not, and they don't want you to die. Yeah. How, like, what are ways, I mean, and every individual is different, like you said, but what are ways to get to that point before the ultimate conclusion actually occurs without having ever been able to get help?
You say ultimate conclusion, do you mean like actually death?
Yes.
Or even hospital?
Yeah.
No, I mean,
well, that's what I said at the beginning. I think the whole point of what I do is to mitigate that moment, because early intervention with any illness is the key, right? It doesn't matter if it's a tonsillitis or cancer, whatever it is, if you get things seen at the earliest stage, you've got a better chance of fixing it or a recovery. So it's exactly the same with anorexia. Although they will hide it and try and protect it, you need to be firm enough and don't allow, like a lot of people, they'll maybe start kicking out and treating you badly or turning it to someone else, to your parents, and then the parents back off and say, oh, just leave them, but that's what you want. That's because then you've got space to take control. So the more you stand in the way and the more you push and the more you do this, then the more likely you are to get it. There's evidence to prove that if you do it within first 2 years, there's a higher chance that it can be recovered from fully. So that's a very good innings. So if you can try and get it within the very beginning stages, once it's ingrained, it's difficult.
Like when you first noticed something was wrong, you had someone say, yes, we need to work on this, versus you having the control to actually embrace it as your friend. That could have, and then once you've embraced it as your friend, it becomes an impossibly difficult task without years of institute.
And I also didn't have a family supporting me at that time. So that was, to me, and they weren't allowed to even come and visit me. This was part of the program to keep me alive. But I thought they were just leaving me to die anyway in my not thinking brain, because I wasn't functioning. I was malnutritious, malnourished. So in my functioning brain, I wasn't rational. So I thought, no one cares about me. I'm here to die. So, bring it on. And I'm ready for this to happen. I have no feelings. I'm not caring about any of this. So if I had a loving, supportive family that I knew cared, and friends and family, people, I might have felt a very different experience.
I was thinking about the fact that you didn't have any family, and the risk for children that don't have a support structure, like that, there's such risk because there's nobody to grab them in that first year or two. to
Like
Right.
had that teacher
Yeah, that's right.
notice some
That's
sign. Not
right.
that it's his fault, but
No,
had
no, no,
he
no.
Well, no, I mean,
had
at that
he
point
took
you
it
were
a little bit-
protecting your siblings, which was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
noble thing, but it, you know,
Yeah.
it kept them out.
Yeah. But that's why, if you heard of Dr. Burke from the States, who does the ACEs, the early child, so it's the adverse childhood experiences, it's ACEs it's called. She's actually just been to talk in Glasgow, and it's all based about childhood trauma, and if you tick all the, like I think they have like factors, if you tick these boxes, if you have more than so many ACEs, the scores, you're more than likely to have a problem with your mental health, mental illness. So it's fixing that at the beginning. And a lot of kids, you know, across the world and in areas where they're not going to have support or families at home looking after them. You know, my story, unfortunately, is not unique. You know, there's people way worse off than me. I'm one of the lucky ones. So, I mean, I can imagine how even harder it's going to be if there's not a soul, if they don't get help at all. And especially in America, I mean, I know that if I've been told by American people that if I had the stays in hospital, I would have bankrupted a family. Because we here have the NHS, and I was able to stay without worrying about treatment. Whereas you guys in America, you know, psychiatric care, I'm not sure how it works, but I know it's not easy as it is here. So there's lots of problems. And going back to the teachers, I do a lot of work in schools because teachers see kids every single day and they can often see problems. So if they can help or guide them to a counsellor or maybe give them a bit of support, potentially that could help too. So, but the ACEs work that Dr. Burke and her team are doing is fascinating.
This is. I'm looking it up right
Yes.
now. Dr. Nadine
yeah.
Burke Harris. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, amazing team.
Got it. Now, do you have a relationship with your siblings today?
Yes, we do. We have relationships. It's not been easy, not between us, but they've all had issues, their own problems to deal with. And some of them actually around food and not so much food, but as in self-esteem issues and their body confidence issues. But they're over those now. So there's only 1 out of 4 that's kind of still having some problems, but the other ones are happy and healthy, and that's the main thing.
And you all have good, solid relationship now.
Yeah, well, we're all living in different parts of the world, so it's difficult. But yeah,
but you keep in touch.
Yeah, we keep in touch. Yeah.
And have you had any other episodes since the waistband? No.
No, but let me tell you. So this is what I think is an important thing to explain. So
yeah.
I was anorexic, okay, and then I became weight restored, and everybody assumes that once, this is what I said at the beginning, eating disorders are not just about super skinny or things like that.
Right.
I had an eating disorder. I had a disordered ability to deal with food and consuming of it, and my way of, everything I worked in my head was still around the calories, and my behaviour was very much a controlled behaviour. So, for example, although I was back to my normal weight, I was still going to the gym every day for 2-3 hours. I still had this perfectionist about me that had to get up at 5. Once I had the kids, I had to get up at 5 in the morning, get them in the swimming pool at 6 a.m, make sure the house is immaculate, go and run a business, be the best mom, be the best. This whole regimented perfection thing was ridiculous. Like, the kids weren't allowed any junk food. It was all, all super healthy food, all organic, had to be. It was this, and I thought this is what happened, right? This is what society was putting on my head. I blamed it on the fact I didn't know much. Because I'd missed this learning gap. I thought, I need to read these books and understand, and they're going to guide me to be the best mom. I don't want to fail them or be a terrible wife. So I felt this pressure. So this is the way I went on until about 12 years ago, maybe 13 years ago. And I was so exhausted. But on the outside, everybody thought, she's got it together, right? She's got, my God, how does she fit it all in? How does she do it all? Blah, blah, blah. But actually, I was so exhausted because I didn't have any time. Like, everything was so regimented and blocked. So one day, I'd seen an advert for strawberry shortcake Haagen-Dazs ice cream. I would never have allowed myself to eat like all these scoops of ice cream or real Coke and things like that. So I thought, you know what? I've had it. So I went and bought this tub of this ice cream, and I literally ate the whole thing. I thought, fuck it. Sorry for this curse.
Nope.
And I thought, you know what? Fuck it. I've had enough. So what if I bloody get some weight on my boat? So what? Who gives a shit? I'm happy. You know, I've come through all this. I'm not a bad person. I think I'm actually okay. And I ate this, and I've never looked back since, actually. It's been such a liberating experience. Yeah. So since that moment, I would honestly say I've been completely fine. I would say I've been recovered since that time. And now, yeah, I eat what I want. I don't have a problem with food. I don't think about numbers all the time. My kids can do what they want. They're happy. They're all healthy. My husband and I are happy and healthy. So yeah, I'm in a good place. And no, I've not had anything for many years now. So
Do you still see a therapist now?
no, I've not seen a therapist since I was in my 20s. Mm-hmm. But you know what? One of the best sayings have you ever heard of Darren Brown?
Dan Brown.
No.
Dan.
Darren.
No.
So he's like a psychological magician. I can't even explain, but he's massive. But I went to see him.
Oh, he's a mentalist.
Yes, he's
Okay.
amazing. He's a very smart man, very smart man. And he says you'll care less about what others think of you when you realize how seldom they do. And I think this is one of the best sayings I've ever said to the kids when I go to school. It's not that people don't care. They love you and support you, but they don't dwell on what you dwell on. Like, it's information to me about you. I worry about it, but I'm not going to dwell on it every second of the day.
It reminds me of the motivational idea that you will be successful only when you realize
When you care about your success more than
anybody in the room. Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Because
okay.
nobody else cares about your success.
Right.
Like nobody can possibly care about your success as much as you do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or don't
yeah.
or don't.
Yeah. But this is the thing. So many people get hung up on what other people think of, like this preconceived idea. That's what I said at the beginning. You know, people, when you asked me what I say to kids in schools, and this is the question, what do you think people think of you, and what you think people think of you? Like, there's the two very different things, and that saying nails it on the head pretty much. It's always very different.
So at what point in there did you write the book, since you bring that up? That's great.
So I, as I said, I didn't tell anybody about what I'd been through for years. And then I thought the most important people I need to tell really is my children, because I don't want them viewing people with any kind of psychological problems or seeing mental illness as something to be scared of, or, you know, having any stigma associated with it. So as soon as they were old enough, I sat them down and said, look, and I was really nervous, actually, to be honest, because I was scared that they might look at me in a different way or whatever. It might affect their love for me, which was the worst thing that could happen. But of course, you know, unconditional love, they didn't give a shit, you know. They were like, yeah, Mom, you know, that's great. We love you all the same. Because they really didn't understand the complexities of it. But they did say, you should really write about this, actually, because
they
could
encouraged
help.
you to.
They encouraged me. They told me I should write about it. Because they said this story could help other people. Mum, look at what you would have maybe needed help sooner if you had read this and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, no, maybe you're right. And there was a moment, actually, where I tried to end my life when I was in the hospital. And I remember coming through that and thinking, no young person should be standing in a horrible grey toilet about to end their life like this. There must be more to the world. And I remember coming through thinking, if I ever make this, if I ever get through this, one day I may share this story to show kids out there that you know, there is more to life. So as soon as they gave me that idea, and as soon as I thought they were old enough,
You alluded, so you just told us about a suicide attempt, and then I think there was one more. I think you mentioned there were two.
Mm-hmm.
What so like what are your thoughts around helping people that may be thinking about ending their lives, about suicide, or if you notice somebody that is down, like how would you approach, having been in that situation multiple times, how would you approach a person there?
Well, I know you had Kwame on and he was speaking about this, and I know that there's an amazing TED talk. Well, there's two actually that I've watched, and one of them is the patrol officer on the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, and he talks about the people he's tried to save and people on the bridge that haven't been able to be saved. And there's a young man who jumped
Kevin
off
Briggs.
the
Okay.
Yeah, that's him. And there's a young man who actually jumped off the bridge, and he said the moment his hand left the rail, he regretted it. So it's not an easy subject to talk about, although I do talk about it because it's one of those, again, that people are scared to ask the question in case it pushes someone to do something. But it's been proven that by talking about it, it's not going to push someone to do it. It's going to maybe open up that conversation. But I know that from what I do now, the conversations I have, that just being there for that person, just for that vulnerable moment, even if you just give them an extra 5 minutes, it may potentially take the edge off. But also what I think is important, I had choices in those two very brutal moments that I had, okay? I knew exactly what I was going to do, and I was determined to do those two things, okay? Nothing would have stopped me doing those two things. However, when I had that psychosis, I didn't want to do that. That was like that choice was taken from me. So this was my worry, that sometimes people don't appreciate that it's not always you choosing to do that. If you have psychosis, it's happening to you. It feels like you're not choosing it. So someone might do it even though they don't feel they want to do it. Like I didn't want to do it. But if I didn't have the information to run out and go up to the psychiatric hospital, God forbid what would have happened, you know. So I think it's really tricky. It's not all one size fits all either. Mm-hmm. But I do know that from what Kevin Briggs talks about, that as soon as you can talk to someone, even just for 5, 10, 15 minutes, it can make all the difference. He's not going to save everybody on that bridge. I mean, he talks about people fly in, they buy a one-way ticket to come and to fly into that bridge to end their life. But he hopes that all these patrol officers there and the methods they've got in place now are going to stop that from happening as much as they can.
Really interesting point. I understand. I don't even know if it's interesting as much as it is enlightening around the idea of not everybody who does or attempts really may want to, because you don't know exactly what they're going through. And the power of the mind. So we're coming up on time, Tina, and first I want to say thank you for openly sharing your story in general, not just here, and having this conversation with us, letting us ask some questions and dig a little bit deeper, or as deep as we can. One question we always ask our guests at the end: if there was one thing that you could leave our audience with, what would that one thing be?
I think what's important, I mean, this is called more in common, isn't it? And we do have humans, we have more in common than what divides us. And I think that's important, that no matter where you are in the world, who you are, what you're doing, you know, be kind. And I think kindness goes a long way, and giving people just time and, you know, empathy, and just, that's the basic human things. And we all want the same thing at the end of the day. Humans live and breathe, all want the same. We want to be safe, secure, fed and watered, and happy. And I think if we can just treat each other like that, then, you know, that's the best thing I've ever been treated with is kindness, and to help as much, like you were saying about Brittany and Brescia, with ending the stigma. And, you know, all these people you've spoken to, they are all here now giving something because they believe and it's touched them in some way. And I believe that you could really help others with what you've been through, and what you can share your experiences, because there's nothing more powerful than starting those conversations, and it can really make a change in someone's life.